Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Monday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. I guess there's going to be a few people having a few beers and some tacos tonight, I guess. Friday was a pretty spectacular day in terms of market performance. They were trading higher, and we were looking pretty hot, and in the overnight, it has been kind of backing off a little bit. So we'll see if that back off turns into something we don't like. But so far, the overnight kind of reversed. Well, we closed a little bit down on halfway down um, on Friday, but we held the 5700, and I was optimistic that we could start off on the long side of this, but not so much. They're back here down and testing the low of low of the Friday trading and kind of holding in this prior distribution from Thursday. So we'll see how the market really feels about this whole thing. The news this morning. We have some news at 9:45 PMI composite. We have ISM services at 10, and that's about it. 3-year auction, well, 3-year auction at 1. So 9:45, 10, that 3-year auction at 1. Then we have tomorrow, the Fed meeting begins, and we get international trade numbers. 10-year auction coming up at 1 there. Wednesday, we get the Fed announcement, and chances are that's going to hold it steady. Even if everyone wants them to lower rates, but probably that's going to hold their rates steady. And we will find if they drop the rates quarter take, I think that sets the market off to the upside again. It would be a welcome sight, but I doubt Powell is going to be that accommodating. Then, of course, when we have on Thursday, jobless claims, productivity. Friday, no news on Friday, just 4 Fed speakers. So that's what we got going on Friday. But I think the big announcement for the week is going to be the Fed meeting and the announcement on Wednesday, and then we'll see the market really if we get some further continuation from last week's pretty good run up. So it's Friday, Thursday, Wednesday they really started moving on last week, and then after that the inflation read, and then we've been up here in this upper range. So our tractor is up here at the 5750s. This lowered range of concern, which is down below that 5600. So they start taking out that 5600 level, nice ledge right there, and starts retracing back down toward the 5500, and that's when we start worrying about the short side again. But we have a pretty good area of support behind us now, so even if they run down and reverse retest that 5600 level, it would be an ugly day for sure. But it's if that holds, we're still in good shape to potentially stay range bound here for a bit, maybe trade it higher. If they take out that 5600 level, I would be more concerned about the state of things and the general market taking and making new highs anytime soon. So watching that lower level 5600s, that's going to be the one to pay attention to. If they take that out, the next level down 5560s, and this is that congestion area we had the hardest time getting out of before. So below 5560s, I think this whole thing kind of collapses down, but it doesn't have to. But I think at that point, if you get that far down, I think the bears are really pushing it. So starting off range bound at this point, given this pullback, we are in this lower range, looking for early weakness still, see if they can, if they're going to try to push this lower. Sometimes when you get this start off day, when the overnight start off weak like that, you don't see a lot of lift at all. and they're kind of pushing that in some of the support areas. You tend to get the pretty weak the overall performance in a day session. We will see, but I mean we've seen that a few times now. Let's hope it doesn't repeat, or if it does, then stay on the short side. So if they keeps pulling back, I'm still looking to buy against that 56, 56, 50, 60s, 56, 40s, 56, 30s for rotations back up, and I think below that 56, 30s, then we start. Well, we have the support areas all the way down to the 56.15 here and the 5600s, but I would say I would start thinking short side of the market if they start taking out the 5630s. Still looking to buy against these lower areas, the 25s, the 15s down to the 5600s. But as I said, that is a pretty ugly day if they get down to reverse retest that level. That's a pretty good move to the downside. So we'll see if how the market how market's going to digest the nice run up we had Friday. If we're going to get a little bit more buying interest here as the day session kick in. On the way up, not going to be very aggressive on the short side. I think the short trades comes early on if they're going to come. There's going to be against the 5670s, 8082s up to the 5700s. And if they get up above the 5700s, I will be back on the long side again and see if they can get this back up into these upper levels again. So early strength, looking for shorts against early strength, but that's just back up to that. The last one would be 5700s. Not looking for not looking to get short any higher than that, I think. At least to get started. So if this overnight turns into a little bit of early strength and further selling, fine. Then we'll stay on the short side. Still looking for buying opportunities on the way down. But if they manage to get back down below that 5600 level, and then bets are off, and then the whole thing is coming apart at that point. All right. So looking for early strength. See if we can get short against that. Early weakness to get long against. I think about that 5700, we're just going to stay on the long side, lean in on that. And if we really see this take out the 5630s, then I'm thinking staying on the short side, still looking to buy against the 25s, 15, and the 5600s, but that's going to be a lot less aggressive on those levels if they get that far down. So that's how we get started. Let's see if this is it in the overnight, or they're going to keep pushing this in the day session. And it's going to be the big question mark for today. The fact that they pulled back a little bit in the overnight like this is a little bit always a little bit concerning. Looking at bonds and the bonds and the Nasdaq. So let me see if I found my bond capital flow chart. There that is. And you can see we are pretty much staying in this range. Backed off a little bit from the 17s, heading down towards that 114 right now. And this is one big attractor area, the 113, 15, 16 up to the 114, 15, 16. It's a point, kind of an area, a point wide area where you'll find support. So we'll see. At this point, I'm just starting off range bound on the bonds. Pretty good overnight move to the downside. So if anything, I would start off on the short side, see if you can retest these lows, maybe take it lower. If they can't, if they start retracing to the upside, maybe we'll get a retracement trade on this 115, 14 level. And that start retracing, I think we may be right back up to that 116 level. But starting off range bound, slight bias to the downside to see if we can get some continuation on this. Same story there. Bonds headed lower. ES and Nasdaq headed lower. So let's see if they can looking for that early weakness to get long against. See if they can take this back up again. Now, if we get some early strength, looking for short against the 115.05s and the 115 13 to 14s for rotations back down. And if they trade above that, I would look for a retracement trade. Look for a long trade at that point and break out to the upside or retracing these single prints. So we'll see how it goes. But if the bond market start heading lower, and that would be I mean, the usually is pretty good because then, well, not pretty good. That would mean the yields are heading higher, but it's not a flight to safety move at that point, even though the yields are creeping up a bit at that point. But starting off, given this overnight, looking to sell strength for rotations back down, see if they can retest this low, potentially take it lower. But I'm looking to buy against support as well. So against the 24s, 20s down to the 12s. This is a pretty good attractor area right where they're at. So they can certainly just stall here and go sideways. Nasdaq. Same story there, backed off the whole freaking overnight, or the whole freaking Friday. So the Friday was a pretty good move to the upside, and this whole thing has been just backed off. We're down here again, right at the 20,000s, and that's going to be the key area for NASDAQ if they can hold that. Nice three-letter ledge at the 750s. If that comes out, if they get that far down, I think we're starting to get some trouble. But it's that means they retrace this whole thing back down. So below the 750s, that would correspond to the ES 5700s. But it's at below that 750 level, I would start leaning in on the short side. I think that could turn into a pretty ugly day. So right now we're right up against it. We were up against this upper area of resistance, the 20,200s. And right now we got knocked down. Looks like the first time to it. The question is just how far they're going to try to knock it down. So we have a pretty good area of support or volume right here, all the way down to this. I would say down to the 19,370s. So if they get back down to that level, yeah, well then we're in trouble. But I mean, there could still be buying opportunities down here, but then you're looking at almost a 700 or 800 point move to the downside. Yes, wouldn't be one ugly day or ugly days as they retrace back in this range again. Now we had a pretty good run up to this upper edge. So if they're going to run it back down, that would not be completely surprising. But you know, we'll see. We'll see how strong the market is. So starting off range bound, I would love to see a retest of that 200 level and then failure. That would set up a nice short trade for rotation down if that develops. But if they at this point, if they're going to the stock market is going to make some gains, probably need to keep hold above that 2,200 and start seeing a little bit of further retracement to the upside. But it seems very much that capital flow has shifted to the upside. But the NASDAQ has to get past this range. Right now, this is a big area of a big range bound area. We were up against an upper area resistance. So far, I knocked it down. So, but if they can't take it out, chances are we're going to be trading back down into that 19,500 level or something to that effect. Big level right there at the 750s. That comes out. I think we may retrace all the way down to the lower end of that range at the lower 1900s, 19,000s. So that's the bigger picture. At this point, looking to buy a weakness still. They took it a little bit lower than my edge here, but against the 930s, 890 to 900s, 860s, 820s down to the 750s. If we start getting some early strength instead, I would look for short setups up to this level, the 2130s. About 2130s, I would not do that anymore. So if we get that, well, same as I said on the ES, a little pop to the upside early on, and they start pushing this to the upside, it could be a nice short trade setting up at the either the 20,060s or 20,130s. And either of those holds, we may see a pretty good move to the downside. So sometimes you get that little early strength, and then we see a terrible Monday. So remember, the last couple of Mondays, actually last two, started off pretty freaking ugly. 2 weeks back, it just stayed ugly. Last Monday, it turned around on us, but we'll see what it's going to do today. So, and then finally, oil and gold. Big move on gold right now. They really popped to the upside. Look at that thing. Big move on gold. They retraced quite a bit to the upside. If I say capital flow on gold here. There's gold. Look at that move, right? We were down at that lower area, and now we are right back up to the next high volume area at the 3330s. So big move on gold. Looks like some big players started buying us, net buying all the way up here to this next attractor area. So right back up again. So I would start off on the long side. Let's see if there's any continuation on this, and if there is, we'll just stay on the long side. However, we are up against an upper area of resistance here, so they kind of they're going to run into some resistance here at the 3330s, the 40s, up to the 50s. So either of these three levels could potentially hold. I would say you can see how the volume starts tapering off up there. So if they start taking out that 3350s, I would be back on the long side again. But I would stay on the long side, but I would stop looking for short setups against resistance at that point. If they take out that 3350s, I think they may be just heading higher at that point. So big move to the upside. Let's see. So if you get continuation, or let's say you see often on the gold, on the side of gold, they have a pretty good retracement of this. And if they start retracing these single prints, that could be a beautiful short trade all the way down here to that 3280s. So I would watch that, but that trade I think triggers if you are taking out that 3320. So that support area comes out, I would start looking for that retracement trade to the downside. And then finally oil. Big gap down on oil. Not quite sure what that was all about, but the gap down at the open, and so far the reverse retest the low of Friday. So 57.60, so down still below 57. So that's pretty spectacular. You can't quite explain that. What drove that thing that gapped it down. But big gap down on oil. They're down here to that lower edge at the 55s. And at this point, we have a shot at potentially taking this lower. So looking for short setups against the 57.60s and 58s. If they trade about 58s, we're back up in this upper range again. But at this point, looking for reverse retest at 57.65 to 70s and that 58 level. And if that both of them comes out, they start trading above it, then go back on the range bound and look for maybe a retracement trade back up again. But if they hold 57.70 or 58 holds, we may see a rotation right back down here again. So we'll take that any time of the day. The cheaper oil gets, the better off I think we're going to get. And you're going to see energy inflation come down in a big way. All right, so that's oil and gold. So both of them seems to be moving pretty good here in the overnight. We'll see what happens. I think if one of these the gold trade on the short side could be a beautiful trade if they start retracing. If they keep going on the long side, I would just be a little bit less aggressive and still look for shorts against those upper resistance areas. And on oil, I'm looking for that reverse retest failure up to the 58s for rotations back down again. All right, so that's the oil and gold. Back to the ES, and there we are, pretty much where we left it. So let's see if we get some further weakness here during the day session, or they're going to be able to turn something around. But at this point, yeah, it's hard to say where they're going to go a day like this. So Mondays has been notoriously weak the last few weeks, so we'll see if we get some further weakness, and that's very tradable. That's start seeing them hammering it again. At least for that first part of the day, you're just going to stay on the short side at that point. At that point, just be mindful that you don't sell into a support area and you still look for buying opportunities against them. All right, so we'll wrap it there, guys. So good trading. And I'll see you back at 11:30 for the next update. All right, guys, later.